Good evening. You're listening live to Kicking It, a show here on the Xtreme Movie Show. I'm your host, Rob, broadcasting to you live from the Indian Hills Studios in the Pine Hills Palace, just west of Orlando, Florida. I have with me a real Dr. Venkman on the SAT feed. Good evening, sir.
How's it going?
It's going. Doctor, tonight we've got a very special movie that we're going to be talking about, and it's special for lots of reasons. One, because it brings back the 1980s, something that we both love, and it's if you just talk about it in American terms, it's a very strange film. And when you watch it, you go, oh, hell yeah, it's even stranger. But it's a kick-ass martial arts film that's known by many names. It's known by Yes Madams, known as Super Cops from the Philippines. It's known as Police Assassins. And of course, we know it as Yes Madam from the print that we watch too. And this movie from 1985 stars Michelle Yeoh, and I believe her first film, as well as Cynthia Rothrock, ass-kicking woman, and we're going to talk about it. But before we get into that, what I want to mention here is that, okay, you and I on Kicking It have talked about films from the 70s a little bit and films from the 80s, but particularly our heroes like Chuck Norris and, say, in my case, Steven Seagal. We both love JCVD, and there's so much to cover when it comes to martial arts films. And even though Kicking It is an action film thing, because our heart is really on martial arts, it was always interesting for us to talk about the way films are set up, particularly what we call like the Chuck Norris template. We even so far as a while ago talked about somebody that we felt really fit into all that, not just in the male version, Scott Adkins, but of course the female version, and Amy Johnston, when we talked about Lady Blood Fight, which is like a JCVD blood sportish kind of movie, and very entertaining. And my thought about Amy Johnston kind of went back to how we've said, well, some women have actually been in films, but maybe not necessarily American films as action stars. So we've talked about Shaw Brothers, Golden Harvest films, and just Kung Fu theater and all these things. But holy crap, when you see Cynthia Rothrock on here,
Yep,
kicking ass the way she does, and the set piece and the stunts in this movie, just insane. But the thing is, it's shot in Hong Kong, which Macau, and this is before China, I guess, completely took it over in the late 90s or whatever it was. So you get a actual change in the way a lot of martial arts movies are made. Originally, they were more like period type pieces, and that's nice, that's great. But now you've got Sammo Hung, who produced it, trying to throw in some comedy, like with Jackie Chan, because they went to like the same opera school, performance school. And so he tried to take a lot of action with the humor and put it in like urban combat things, like out on the streets, out in, subways, out in the mall, out in somebody's home. And you get all of that in this film. So I got to tell you, it's been almost 30 years since I've seen this film, and I paid attention to it today. And I got to say, off of another fresh watch, what a great film. What a fantastic film. People call it the Girls with Guns subgenre, women kicking ass, taking names, and it's believable. I'm totally buying what they're selling. What about you for your initial thoughts?
I said that was a really good movie. I watched it in the original Chinese language. I think it's Cantonese. I'm not sure what it was in, but anyway, so I watched the subtitles. And I actually thought it was really good. I love the fact that Sammo Hung produced this, and he actually was in this. He was the boss. The old man that the three idiots were raising money up so they could buy him an apartment. It was those, even though they were crooks, But I love the fact that they had the one who actually basically he forged documents, all that stuff, your passports, all that stuff, and I love like the scenes of him, even though, and then his two other friends, one one is Asprin. And
Asprin, not aspirin. Yeah, not the medicinal aspirin, but just aspirin. I'm like I think, what the hell's his name Aspirin for?
Asprin, and then I forget what the other two names were, but they were just great in this.
Strepsil, which to me was like strep throat.
Panadol. That's the guy that makes passports. This was kind of a lighthearted at first, and then like towards the end, it got a little bit dark.
It did.
I was like, I did not expect this from I felt like when I saw this, you have two girls in here basically going to be doing the fighting, so they're the stars. And they're like, oh, is this going to be like a bubble pop? It's a bubble gum, and I was like, this is actually like, holy crap, it's actually really dark. So So when I saw this, I was watching this, and I was like, man, I just love it. Like you said, the three guys in there. You Asprin and Strepsil and then Panadol. When those two together, it's like the Three Stooges. You know, you saw Strepsil was like the bigger brother. He's Mo, and then you got Asprin and Panadol are trying to kill each other all the time, because they don't like each other.
Their eye pokes, though, are a lot more deadlier.
But what really got me, it was really hilarious, was the parking inspector and the police officer.
Yeah.
Fighting over, he gets you right there, right? Tickets.
Well, the thing is, when you start to watch this film, and if it's a first watch for you and you don't know what to expect, obviously the 80s and being Hong Kong, it's a little bit different than what was going in the United States, where you would have your Chuck Norris films that are a little bit more, I think, pure in terms of the spirit of martial arts. And then, of course, everything just exploded in the mid to late 80s with action films and martial arts. And even Chuck Norris jumped on that bandwagon. Nothing wrong with that. It's just the way it was. But the one thing that stood out for me that gave it a real strong sense of the 80s was a lot of it was shot outdoors. It wasn't cheaply shot or made. It doesn't. But to me, but it wasn't very glitzy and sexy looking. It was shot in Macau, a lot of it, and so big, dense gambling city over there, and you definitely get a sense of it of when they're going around to the different places. They're in the Hyatt, and they're in some other places like the boss's home. Is we'll talk about at the end. Is fantastic, but also there's a members only jacket one of the bad dudes is wearing. I'm like, yep. You're 80, you wear one of those, you're a bad dude. You got the one dude with the aviators, and then you've got one bad dude who's his henchman, the second in charge, and he's a legit ass kicker.
Mad Dog?
Yeah, but
I think he was Army.
Well, the soundtrack, okay. I'm not familiar with Asian music too much. I've heard of different instruments. Sometimes, you think about flutes and stuff. But they have a little bit of a synthesizer, but then you know what else? And this may not have been apparent to you, but being, as I like to say, the John Carpenter mark that I am, they took chunks of actual clips from Halloween, the music, the score, and put them in there. Like with one of the earlier fights, I'm like, that's freaking Halloween. And then they played it again during another fight. I'm like, what the hell? This is normally when Michael's like, walking up the stairs and getting ready to kill, Laurie and the kids. And I'm here and I'm like, okay, and then they have some weird, goofy, fluty sounding keyboarding thing, and I'm like, what the hell's going on? I don't get that sense of humor in the film, but it's there if you listen to it.
Do you know what's funny about this movie? Originally, they weren't even looking for Cynthia Rothrock. They were looking for a male person to come in, and then the team where she works for, or the group, basically said, you know what, here. How don't you look at our women? We have some actually female martial artists, and as soon as they saw the Rothrock, like they quickly changed the male lead to a female. And my issue with this is like, I did not like her character, her attitude. Like, she's great at the martial arts, she's great at that. I'll give her that, but she just seemed like a Karen.
Well, I'm going to disagree with you on that. I think both women were very angry, but I think the way they chose to express it was different. I think Michelle Yeoh's character, she's incredibly sexy in here. You can see why she was Miss Malaysia, only 2 years removed. Really just jumps out her natural beauty on screen. But she dealt with a lot of sexism, much like the way we talked about Policewoman last week with Jackie Chan's bad guy role with the mole. But Cynthia's character, to me, yes, she's angry. As the one guy was joking, there's a lot of sexism in this movie. He's like, ha ha ha, you must be on your period, and it's like just ridiculing her. You ugly, you no good. The two cops that go to pick her up, and they're just talking shit about her, and it's like, she doesn't look angry. She's just like, I'm not putting up with any of this nonsense. She just kicks ass.
Well, the reason I said I didn't like it because her character did not fit the role, or didn't fit the movie, because she had nothing to do with the senior inspector, as far as she had no personal relationship, where Michelle Yeoh's character actually knew it and was actually trained by him. So actually, if anyone should have been pissed off most time, it should have been Michelle Yeoh, but Michelle Yeoh was the opposite. She was, she was the kind of setback, kind of joking and then here comes in her, she's a hothead, like, we need to beat the guy up, blah, 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 like, and interrogation. I was like, what is this? It's like, what beef do you have?
It's over the top, and I love it.
If anything, she was more a Karen. She was a little bit racist to her. It's like, well, you don't know what you're doing over here. Where we do things differently. It's like, dude, step back. You're in a foreign country. shut the hell up.
Stranger in a strange land, give it what you got, and I don't mind it.
I'm not even Chuck Norris would offend people like that. As I said, when I think of her, I think her character, she is just basically a Karen, an angry Karen in those martial arts.
I agree to disagree. But she does have that chip on her shoulder kind of stuff. But the thing about the way she's presented is she's dressed up in like the 80s unisex kind of suit thing or whatever. Her sexuality is not really portrayed. It's really kind of hidden behind clothes and stuff as opposed to Michelle's character a little bit. At least that's how it looked like to me, how they could differentiate them. One blonde, the other one brunette. And I think for her character, what was kind of neat is that no matter how you're trying to describe her, being her, I think, first role in the movie, she nailed it. And it was fantastic because only in a few spots could I really see where some of the action might have been sped up just a little bit, but it wasn't so gratuitous as like early James Bond films. But for her, just the choreography and the way she moves was fantastic. And what I'll say about this is she was really known in her kung fu style of like forms, showing and displaying different ones, and also like with weapons. And so that really translates well. And I got to say, Corey Yuen or Yuen, or however you pronounce his name, who directed this, I don't know what the hell he did. I don't know what he got her to drink. I don't know if he made her pissed off on screen, but whatever he did worked, because I tell you what, to have a female debut and have within 1 minute of the movie starting, maybe 2 legitimately if you're actually timing it, to have Michelle Yeoh in an action sequence there with a shootout and stuff like that, kind of Dirty Harry-ish. And then you have Cynthia's character when she shows up about a half hour into it. My God, they each give them within a moment a really fantastic action sequence that's quite believable, done very well. And it's the kind of film that we've talked about where you actually get to watch the majority of the action. It's not 50 gazillion quick cuts like modern day Seagal flick might be, where you can hide stuff. You get to see all the kicks, you see the turns, you get to see all the strengths that she has, her flexibility, her grace when she's doing it. And it's no prima donna kind of stuff. People are flying around. I got to tell you, another way that makes the 80s, besides members only jackets and everything else that we've talked about, the soundtrack, is tons of broken glass, people being kicked through, slammed through, and these girls get their ass beat too a lot. I mean,
that one guy when she kicked him through the guy fell through the glass steps or things, you just see this charge just showing on his face. I was like, holy crap! And what's funny about this whole entire movie? When I say funny, is like, well, it's not normal. Is the 3 Stooges in here are great martial artists, but they play it off to make it like they're not.
Yes.
I was like, holy crap! These guys can especially the pool hall scene when they're fighting. How he crawls over it, he kicks the guy in the face, and he crawls over. It's just Jackie Chan stuff, comedy.
Yes. Well, the thing too is plot loosely is these 3 amigo type guys end up accidentally somehow getting microfilm, ladies and gentlemen, a long lost plot device. Oh, I miss microfilm and microdots so much. It doesn't exist anymore, but my God, it's fantastic.
When I see microfilm, I think of like Zoolander. How are you supposed to see this?
I know. No, but you're right. You're right about the tone, because these 3 guys are goofballs, but they actually, again, what I like about a movie like this, it's not just the 2 people that kick everybody's ass and that's it. They weren't stars at this point. They're brand new.
No. So the main bad guy wanted the film back. I thought it was hilarious. I thought it was hilarious. So they're like, so not only after those 3 guys, the guy who we sold to the passport to, the guy, the dead guys, who was part of the deal, because the 2 main guys, Asprin and Strepsil, were posing as waiters at the hotel where this all went down, and not knowingly, they were out there just stealing stuff. They stole the dead man's passport and not realizing that it had the microfilm in it.
Yep.
And so that. Even though the guy kept the microphone, he didn't realize he was using a microphone in there. The guy who was doing the stuff, forgery, he ends up selling that passport to somebody else. Well, that guy's going. The 2 guys are basically realize that someone's trying to kill them, and he's looking for the microphone, and they realize the passport. And they're like, well, if we get this, if we get this guy the passport, he'll leave us alone. Turns out, and so they realize once the guy already sold it to somebody else, they're like, the only way you can do got a narc on him. You got to get the passport back. Of course, this guy basically wants to kick the crap out of him now, because the guy escapes out of jail. Because the reason he got out of jail because once again, Cynthia Rothrock beat him up, so he has to be transported to the hospital. He ends up escaping because the cops are incompetent. So yeah, and then goes back to place, and there's a whole like fight out between him and the guy who does the passport stuff, and all the stooge, and I love it. The whole comedy routine, it's Jackie Chan style, and I alwast wonder if they at this point if they're watching Jackie Chan or if Jackie Chan maybe exchanged some work for them. Or it just gives people
Jackie and Sammo Hung had relationships.
Yeah.
They had similar philosophies as far as how to do it.
Well, yeah, they're best friends. Yeah, so I must wonder, like, it's like Sammo Hung's like, you know what? We're going to do a little bit of Jackie Chan challenge out here, and people are going to love it. And it ranked the 25th out of that year as far as being the best selling.
Yes.
Yeah, like that's, and I said this movie is actually, it's funny, it's good, it has a storyline. It is a dark moment in here, like, and the end has just a plot twist. There's no way you would have saw it coming.
Oh well, let's save that for the very end.
Well, I don't want to reveal it though, really.
Well, we'll mention a little bit, but as far as the two ladies go, I mean, I don't know how familiar you were with both of them.
Yeah, that's Bobby Lee and Jim Lee, aren't they? The Double Dragons.
No, I meant the ladies. Michelle and Cynthia. I mean,
that's what I mean. That's what they
Sonya Blade.
Not even Sonya Blade. It's an insult to Sonya Blade. Sorry.
No, but I mean, everyone always, I think, knows Michelle because I think of Tomorrow Never Dies, James Bond, right? And I believe that's the movie she was in with Pierce Brosnan. Everyone's like, oh my gosh, she's so great.
Actually, before that, she was in Super Cop with or is that afterwards? I don't know. Super Cop with Jackie Chan.
But I mean, look, 80s women, they're just women in general, kicking ass. We've talked about you don't get to see it that much. And we talk about how seeing that is always a treat, it's a pleasure. It does flip the script. I don't consider it a feminist thing. Oh, women are equal to men. They can do what men do and all that nonsense crap. The point is these two women are legit. They're shown that way on screen. Yes, they beat up a lot of people. Yes, they get their ass beat to take an incredible amount of punishment. But it's just the action scenes are second to none in this movie, and they're fantastic. And like I say, everybody gets their chance to shine in moments. But to your point, with them having some comedy in it, maybe some dark scenes, I think the thing for me is about the second act of the movies was kind of meh. It just sort of kind of floated through it. And then when we got towards the last end, you just knew things were going to be picking up. So the main bad guy, I think, like bosses should be, one of the problems is we're supposed to ring for these two ladies, but part of me has gone, man, the main boss lord, the dude's laughing every chance he gets, and there's some great dialogue in here, like the one hitman dude of his says to the one guy, "You're a professional in your field, but so am I," because he's an assassin or whatever. And It's like, okay, he looks like a legit badass, and he's in the final fight with one of the ladies. And to me, the main bad guy, you get to his crib, and it's just sick. He's got the wide wooden stairs with no railings. He's got right behind him the fountains that you can kind of hear a little bit. You can see them going down. And I got to tell you, another thing that was huge in the 80s besides malls. Yes, malls were a thing in the 80s, gathering places, watering holes for everybody, especially the young. But they also had fountains in them. It wasn't until the late 80s, early 90s that fountains got removed from malls, and then the malls took a nosedive. That being said, in this one, you go, okay, they're showing the house, and you're like, are they going to tear up the whole house? And it's like, yeah. And then instantly, to me, what came to mind was Quentin Tarantino with his fight scene where they have a house that looks like it's very similar design, and I wonder if he designed it out for this one specifically or what, where they go through like 40, 50 bodies. And I don't know. I just think this last act, especially the last 15 minutes of the movie, wow. If you didn't really care for the movie up to the last 15 minutes, the last 15 minutes is worth the money. These two ladies get to the house. They end up getting into a fight with a bunch of people before they take on the demigod and the gods. And then it escalates. It goes to a higher level. And before it has that last kind of twist ending that you're talking about,
I just want to point out,
the stunts were fantastic.
There was a breakout scene for a Strepsil when he goes to rescue Asprin. And he's got all the guns on him. He's got the grenade. He's like, "Get back! I got a grenade!" And he drops it, and he pulls it, and they're like, "Oh crap!" And it just starts playing its song. And I love how the main guy, he's like, he keeps putting the other guy in front of him. He's like to shield himself. And he's like, don't worry, boss, it'll be fine. It'll be and like, he keeps pulling each gun out. They're all prop guns, but he forgets there's actually a real gun in there. He doesn't know this because from before, originally they actually had a gun and whatever from a couple earlier. So he's pulling out. He's like, the guy's like, oh, I'm still alive. Oh, thank goodness. And he's like, and then finally he gets the actual gun and he shoots the guy. And he's like, holy crap, he actually has a real gun. Because at the point, they don't believe him anymore because he keeps shooting the blanks. So.
Yeah, now to me, the Three Stooges, there was an interesting scene where the bad guys are coming to get him, and the one dude's in there, and they throw the grenade, over the top of the door in, and he grabs it, and he thinks it's fake, and he throws it back, and it blows up. You're like, what the hell? But then they go in there to fight him, and you can tell, obviously, the guy's acrobatic, and it's not trying to display martial arts, because he has like this bunk bedish kind of setup, and he kind of hops up there real fluid-like, then kicks off the wall, and then slides over the spot, over on top of the door. I'm like, damn, that was pretty good. The room was not set for me to go, okay, something's going to go down in here like that. But it did. I'm like, okay, that's cool.
It looked like a little kid's room. It didn't, because these guys, the way he lives, it's a bachelor pad. That's what it is. But it's like, yeah, it's full of 80s stuff. So basically, he's in an apartment flat where he is. He's high up at the ground. And, these guys trying to kill him. He tries jumping through the window. They keep on through. It's just the whole thing is, I just thought it was it's not funny. As far as when they fight, when it comes to the Stooges, Stooges guys, these guys are just amazing. Because they said they're really trying hard not to pull off, stunt. Because they don't want to, outshine the assassin dude. They were really built the guy, and that's the guy who's wearing the members only jacket, I believe, right?
All I needed was a toothpick, and well, there's gold chains galore too, and that's
I call him young David Carradine. Asian Carradine. It's like
he was middle aged by that point.
I know, but so like I just kept thinking like I'm like, this guy really looks like David Carradine if he became like assassin.
Well, look, before we talk about the final big battle with the two ladies, okay? Is there a favorite scene or some other scene about the movie that you wanted to bring up or anything else before we talk about that final fight?
When Strepsil and what's his name, Asprin are trying to get themselves arrested so that they go to jail. He's like, hey, the guy can't kill us if we're in jail. We'll be protected. It's like, well, wait, how are we going to get arrested? Like, they see the two guys fighting over a ticket. He's like, if you punch me, it's like, yeah, nothing will happen. I'm sitting there. Like, if you punch me, you go to jail. Like, wait, we're going to punch you, guy. So they punch the police officer. They beat him up. And they bring him in handcuffs. They're like, oh, what happened to you? He's like, so what's the charge? And like the guy wouldn't say because he's so embarrassed because he's all beat. He's got a busted face and eye. He's like, oh, and the guy's like, just say no. We beat your ass. It's like, so, and the girls like obviously know who these guys are, and like, well, they want to use him as bait, so they won't. They let him go. Wait, you don't let us go? It's like, well, we probably have to do something more serious. Here, we'll do this. We'll just grab her, rip her clothes off. I love it when they got the guy just got me in the balls.
All right. So, the comedy aside, as you said earlier, and I think it's
the whole movie's comedy, bro. It's comedy.
It is. But the last battle sequence is one of the best I've seen. It's fantastic. Both the ladies get plenty of time. It's not like 30 seconds. That's it. It's not I'm gonna break your bones kind of thing. This is just it's a pure six brawl. I mean, it's just a humdinger. They really go at it. So
and they're not cops either right now because they turned in their badges and guns.
Yeah, they're off the grid. They've gone rogue. Okay. General, if we were talking about From Dusk Till Dawn.
You can take this badge and shove it. I'm going to do my own job.
Well, Michelle, she takes on Chun Fat, whatever the hell the dude's name is. This is the guy with the fake eyebrows and the equally fake, gigantic, huge black mustache. I mean, and black headband. Because headbands were 70s and 80s things.
He's called Big Mustache in this, I think.
Mad Dog, I think. Whatever. And, we saw different prints. That's one of the things, too, I want to bring up real quick before we talk about the fight. Because, it's just the way things were. I don't know if they're really any different. But I think the UK version. So this was called...
It was called Policewoman, yes. I watched the Chinese version with the Cantonese language, and they actually said, in the line of duty 2, Policewoman Assassin.
Yes, because it's police assassins, and so we were going, no, the one from 1985, the
Yeah,
debut of these women.
yeah, it is. That is, he's called. Yeah, it's Chung Fat, and according to Wikipedia, I did look up his name because I couldn't remember what it was. He is called his own as Big Mustache.
Okay.
Even though they call him Mad Dog in this.
They get into a fight, and Michelle gets a chance to do most of her own stunts, right? But there's one scene or two of them that really kind of stand out to me when she's fighting them. It's none of this stupid little, I'm going to stab at you with a knife. The guy's very fluid the way he's moving, and they're fighting, and she gets sliced up a few times too. But there's a stair-step wooden piece section because the house is kind of symmetrical. The way they shoot it. And, if you're looking at the screen, you see the big wide wooden stairs with no rails and the fountains on either side. But then you have a top level on either side, kind of like in a U fashion with glass partitions going around. It's kind of Miami's ish, about Miami Vice-ish in a way if you think about it. But when she's fighting and they get to the upstairs part, there's a part where she gets kicked and she ends up having to kind of flip over this little stair step looking piece, and you can tell it's her. And there's another where she gets kicked through the quote unquote real glass. But then there's another one where it's like she kicks the dude. I believe it's her doing a kick in, and a dude goes from one side to the other, and he hits the edge of the stairwell, flips over, catches his two legs, which then flips him completely on the ground, and you see this in one long shot. Now, obviously, it's choreographed. Obviously, there's a stunt double in there doing it. Holy shit, what a friggin' spot. I mean, this is the kind of, when we talk about practical effects and no CGI, I want to see this. I don't care if the guy's wearing, padded something on his back or whatever when he falls to the ground. It's phenomenal.
Chung Fat actually did his own stunts.
Okay, so there you go. I mean,
yeah, so he was a choreographer and all that stuff. So he did all that stuff himself.
Man, it's insane. It's sick. And then Cynthia, she has the fight with the legit looking dude. I mean, he's no Bolo Young, but he's got a real nice intimidating look. He's the assassin going, "You're a professional, and so am I." It goes on forever, and she gets punched and slammed too. But I've never seen a woman do more splits in a career, let alone in a film, than in this one, because she's doing it. There's one scene where she does the split on a wall, literally with her leg going entire up, and then comes off and kicks the guy, and you're like, did I just see that? I mean, it's just, I don't care if they pause it for a microsecond or what. She even does this one thing where she kind of flips around and flips onto the guy, and I'm like, my God, she does this double kind of kick thing too, that I'm going, now they would have it where you'd have that camera scene that looks like a drone shot, kind of where it would zoom in on the Matrix, and then kind of go in slow motion and then zoom around and then zoom out and stuff. It's not like that. And I'm like, my God, this is still shot better than so much stuff that's even on screen today. And I think the final fight is absolutely fantastic. And the only weird thing is at the end, the boss gets away with it. Or so we think, because, part of the Three Stooges guy takes out one of the guns, keeps shooting it, and then its blanks, but then it's a real live round at the next gun, kills him, and then boom, it freezes and goes to end credits. I was like, okay, that was kind of dark for the ending, especially for how goofy some of the stuff was in this film. But talk about the final fight, Doctor. Give me your take.
Well, the whole final fight was just nuts. It's what you would expect from a martial arts movie. Actually, great martial arts, not this Americanized stuff. This is actual pure actual knowledge, and because these people have been trained since 4 years old. These are the Damian Waynes of today. Basically they are just going crazy on this, and I love the fact the whole fights in this stuff. He's like, and she Cynthia Rothrock, he's like, oh, you need a knife to fight me? And he's like, oh, I don't need a knife, and puts a knife in the side, and they're all fighting, and then I love how they switch partners while they're fighting too. Which is basically, what you think about it, it's all choreographed. It's basically they switch dancing partners, basically. The one guy, I'm trying to figure out what his name was. He's the one that had, he's the one that was going to have the members only jacket guy. He finally manages to get the film out of the guy's tongue, and then he destroys it, even though he's very much, he's just been he's dying. He shoves it right into what you want to call it, the light, so it burns. So it basically destroys any evidence they had, basically of taking Tien into custody. The whole thing is I love the fact that they actually did not pull a punches. You could actually, even though you got the thump, 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 like no, it's like you can tell it's digital on it on there, but they're actually really hitting the person. But not as hard. It's enough for it to slap, but it's enough where they're making physical contact. It's not where you're like, oh, wrestling. Oh, he punched him, air, and he falls back. No. These people, like I said, they are dedicated to this fight. They are dedicated to what they do. It's not Hollywood. Hollywood just ruins everything when they touch, when they try to do action stuff.
Yeah, I'm a fan of Tony Jaa and his films. We haven't even talked, I think, about any of those. I think they've just been mentioned. And obviously the 80s being our favorite decade here on the Xtreme Movie Show, no matter which channel we're doing, like tonight, Kicking It or the Two Extreme Horror Show, we have a tendency to go back to the 80s. And I think one of the reasons why is because in many ways you could argue the 80s was a transition decade from the way things, were done to the way they were going to be. And I think now, currently here in 2020, you get a lot of kind of nostalgia for the 80s, and a big part of that too with action films was martial arts, because it was so huge in the 70s and it carried over into the 80s that there's just a lot of variety. And if you just watched American action films, supposedly karate films, it was neat because you did have people doing their own version of it, which was cool. I know Seagal gets a lot of hate because of him supposedly being an asshole and stuff these days and being fat, and Will Sasso making fun of him on Mad TV 15 years ago or whatever. But those couple films you have were great. Chuck Norris has been around, and you had legit guys in it that even helped out in a lot of these films. So when you get to see a different take on it with a lot of the urban stuff in this film, you get to see two women really bring it and do so convincingly in it. Wow, what a positive. I mean, and it's a testament to how good this movie is and what it was like growing up in the 80s, being able to watch a film like this.
I remember who the guy is. It's actually Dick Way. That's what his name is. D-B-E-I-I-E.
Way.
E-I-I. And the guy has been in other movies. I remember seeing him before. Also, I watched this. He was in Project A with Jackie Chan.
Yes,
he was one of the guys in there. One of the bad guys. This guy, just looking at his movies list, he's done a lot of stuff. And he's also in another movie came out this year, same year as this one. It's called My Lucky Stars, which was another one with Jackie Chan and Michelle Yeoh. So, or not much of Michelle Yeoh, but it's another movie that I really want to cover too. Like I said, I have more appreciation for these movies coming in the 80s, even though, especially if I have to watch them in English dub or just watch them in the regular Cantonese. These people, it's like what Erica says, like in Engleton say about comics. There's guys who actually care about the craft. They actually want to. They're not in it for the money. They're actually in it just to be serious. They have respect for what they're doing. They're not just coming in like, you know what, I'm gonna make it blah 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 and move on. That's Hollywood. That's American Hollywood. That's that's the freaking crap that we get today. Hong Kong over there, they're serious. Jackie Chan, how they build himself up. Everyone modeled themselves after Bruce Lee, because Bruce Lee was the guy who actually did basically did everything first. Well, I don't know about first, but I'm just saying everybody had a lot of respect for him. And it's like I said, there would be, if without Bruce Lee, there'd be no Jackie Chan, there'd be no Cynthia Khan, or there'd be no Cynthia Rothrock, there'd be no Steven Seagal.
Yeah, it's interesting because you bring up a lot of valid points, but for me to close out, what I would say is that it's a very underrated movie. It's one that I knew of and saw back in the day, and it was different. But I think being a teenager at the time and watching it, I was a little spoiled in hindsight, because in the 80s it was expected that you could go see 3 or 4 different types of martial arts films and actors, and in this case actresses. It was like, oh my God, there's women on the screen. It wasn't like that at all. It was just like, okay, here's women ass kicking, they're believable, and that's what worked.
The way I describe it now is like, because a lot of people love Xena Warrior, Princess, because what's never seen a woman actually fight before? Like, well, these people are the 90s kids are growing up. It's like, well, if you've never seen 80s action stuff and all as far as back in the day, Hong Kong, you're missing out. Like I said, I personally have not. I knew there was some women's stuff, but there was some I just didn't care. I was like, it looked kind of hokey stuff. Now that I've been watching more of the Jackie Chan stuff in his early days, and just any of the Hong Kong martial arts stuff, and you gotta appreciate, because there's nothing like that today. even you see Donnie Yen anything. Look, he's in freaking Mulan. He's not really, he did Hitman 4, but other than that, it's like you're not really seeing great martial arts stuff as it was back then. And I love it because of like the whole plots. They're lighthearted, and guess what? It's the freaking 80s, man. So you're gonna see the members only jackets. You're gonna see some bad stuff. You're gonna see the little cars. It's I just love it. That decade, man. Can we just go back to the 80s and just stop time right there and let's just keep going?
Well, there's definitely more to cover, and I'll be looking forward to doing that with you and everybody else too. So, yeah, a little bit of a different audience tonight, being a foreign film in a sense, if you want to look at it that way, but definitely the type of movie we would like to cover here on the Xtreme Movie Show. So, Doctor, I'd like to thank you for showing up. I'd like to thank everybody in chat who showed up. If you haven't seen this movie, guys, gals, go check it out. It's definitely worth a watch. It's definitely one to file away because when we talk about other types of stuff, it's one we're going to be referencing in the future. And that's one of the main reasons, besides it being a good film, that we decided to cover, because it has significant cultural value. And on that, I'd like to say thanks for listening. As always, stay extreme. Good night.
Good night, people.